Go, Preston.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the June 28, 2021 Library of Virginia board meeting. Due to the executive order and public health emergency that are still in effect, we are, as a board, meeting virtually, as has been officially publicized. We hope this is our last meeting virtually. And the public may view the meeting at the library's YouTube channel. So welcome, everyone. It's nice to see you. So remind me, we need to do an official roll call where I need to call everyone. Is that correct, or are we officially checking everybody and I don't need to do that?
Right. We do have a quorum. In fact, I think we have virtually everybody.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
So the approval of the agenda, you may need to do a roll call vote. That, yeah, Audrey said.
Right.
Yeah. Just once you vote, you'll just need to identify each other by name and do roll call vote. But other than that, you're fine.
Checklist. So we do have a quorum, and we'll call the meeting officially to order. Thank you very much. So the agenda is before you and has been publicly advertised. Is there a motion to approve the agenda that's been before us?
Move.
It's been
Second.
Moved by Marcy and seconded by Scott. So I will do a roll call vote on that. Mr. Gary, everyone can unmute yourselves for the roll call, and then you can.
Aye, approved. Hello.
Yeah, thank you. So Mr. Gary, Ms. Blevins,
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell,
Aye.
Mr. Canada,
Aye.
Ms. Castillo,
Aye.
Mr. Islami,
Aye.
Mr. Light,
Aye.
Ms. Little,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Murphy,
Aye.
Ms. Reel,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Ms. Sims,
Aye.
and Mr. Tango,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So that is approved. We also now have the very happy occasion to welcome two new board members. Lana Reel, who is with the King William Public School System as a media specialist in the library there, and Robert Canada with the University of Lynchburg. And I would like to call on each of them to say just a word or two about themselves. Lana, would you like to go first? And I hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly. Is it simply?
It's Lana. So it's Lana Reel here. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Yes, I am a library media specialist with King William County Public Schools. I'm also a member of the Upper Mattaponi Indian tribe here. So I'm happy to be representing both my county and my tribe. I actually just moved here about a year ago from Arizona, where I grew up for mostly 25 years. It's where I got my MLIS degree, and I'm new to serving in school libraries, background in public libraries, but I'm happy to be here serving on the board now for the Library of Virginia. So thank you for having me.
Excellent, excellent. So we're so happy to have you. You'll love being a part of this institution. And Dr. Canada from the University of Lynchburg, my old hometown. Welcome.
There you go. Hey, thank you, Mr. Bryan. Good morning, everyone. I'm Robert Canada, Vice President for Inclusive Excellence with the University of Lynchburg, of course, in Lynchburg, Virginia. I am relatively new, approaching my 19th month tenure here at the university. I spent 25 years in the University of North Carolina system, particularly in Pembroke, North Carolina, where the Lumbee tribe resides. And I am a degree librarian, getting my MLS from University of Kentucky. And I looking forward to working with each and every one of you.
Excellent. We're so happy to have you as well. We're very happy to have both of you. Welcome.
Robert, this is Cham Light. I'm also here in Lynchburg, and I haven't had the pleasure to meet you yet, but offline we're going to have to get together soon and get to know one another.
Most definitely. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you, Cham. Next item of business is the official approval of the board meeting minutes from the April 12th, 2021 board meeting. Everyone has received those, and hopefully you've had a chance to review them. Are there any amendments to the April 12, 2021 minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So
I moved.
Paul Brockwell moves and
I'll second.
Laura seconds. Thank you very much. And once again, we have, because this is virtual, we have to do these by name roll calls. So if everyone will unmute again, and we can move through this pretty quickly. Mr. Gary,
Approved.
Ms. Blevins,
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell,
Aye.
Dr. Canada,
Approve.
Ms. Castillo,
Aye.
Mr. Islami,
Aye.
Mr. Light,
Aye.
Ms. Little,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Murphy,
Aye.
Ms. Reel,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Ms. Sims,
Aye.
Mr. Tango.
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Thank you very much. So now let's just move efficiently to the committee and division reports. The first item up is the Archival Collections and Records Management Services Committee, and we have Ms. Little. Welcome.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. You have in your packet a report compiled by John Metz regarding the microfilm issue. It is, I think, a little bit better than we had originally anticipated, but we're still looking at a major issue that needs support from the legislature. We have looked at what can best be done. The original estimate, as John indicates in the report, is that we were looking at decades of work to try to get a handle on this. They have revamped their approach and it is improved, but to be quite frank, a 8 to 10 year time period is, I think, really more than we want to spend dealing with this issue, because during that time period, we're going to have additional problems, I'm sure. The time period of 8 to 10 years would be if the legislature is willing to fund not only the duplication of the diseased microfilm, but to employ an additional 2 individuals. And even that would still leave us without a real handle on exactly what we have. That would continue to be a problem for a number of years. I've talked to John about this, and it looks like if we would look at possibly adding 4 instead of 2, we could reduce it to a manageable problem. This will need, as John indicated, a request for funds, and the staff is in the process of presenting this, of creating this. Once this is done, we'll be coming back to the board for a request to place it in. Well, now, I'm not too sure about that, because I did fail to ask, do we need to ask the board at this point to support moving forward with the request? Or can the staff do that without the support of the board?
I can answer that one. Which the way the budget process works is agencies are asked, and that usually happens somewhere in August, September timeframe, by the governor's office to submit what are called budget decision packages. So that's where you summarize and provide a monetary request, a number, summarize your issue and what you would like the governor to include in his budget. That agencies do routinely. It's only if that is not funded that we would need the library board to decide if it cares enough about something and wishes to seek a budget amendment in the General Assembly. And that's something agencies cannot do. The library board would have to do that. We are not allowed to go against the governor's budget. So what we were thinking of doing, what we would propose is we will know what the budget instructions are from the governor late summer, early fall. So before the September meeting. And we will have that, we will fit our request to what our instructions are. We would like to bring that to the September meeting for this committee and also for the Legislative and Finance Committee to then determine if it's not funded by the governor, would they be willing to seek a budget amendment? So that's really the crucial point. There's nothing we could do on that over the summer, if that helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Sandy. It was something, the time frame was something that I had just failed to pay attention to. And I was thinking it was August when that had to be done rather than in September. So we'll wait until we see what happens, but the Archives Committee may well be back to the library board if necessary, because this is something that literally cannot be ignored. These are records that we can't afford to lose. Are there any questions?
Questions for Barbara? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Barbara. This is the big issue that's on our plate right now. I think the board would be entirely supportive, obviously, of any decision package requests that the administration puts forward. This is very important, so we will all work together on it. Thank you. Before I go to Ms. Sims for Education Outreach and Research, let me note that Pia Trigiani is with us. I failed once again to recognize Pia at the top of the script. Pia, for the new board members, Pia is the chair of the Library Virginia Board Foundation. And so she and Scott Dotson work together, and they're often, always on our calls here. So we're all on the same page, but welcome, Pia. May I go to Marcy Sims, chair of the Education Outreach and Research Services Committee?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am going to defer to my colleague, Greg Kimball, to give our report. Thank you, Greg, if you would.
My pleasure, Marcy. Good morning, everybody. In your packet, of course, you do have a narrative of all of the things I'll be talking about, so I'll be brief. We just closed the We Demand exhibition on May 28th. I was happy to see that despite COVID and all kinds of other issues that we faced over the last year, that we did have almost 10,000 people attend in person, which is really good given the situation that we were in. And had, of course, a number of other programs related to that. Looking over the traveling exhibits, and there's a good description of where a lot of those go. But one of the things I really jumps out at me when I look at what we're traveling around the Commonwealth is really the geographical coverage that we have. So, you know, we're covering everywhere from Buchanan County to Boyden down in Southside, Franklin County. And then, of course, these are all, you know, relatively rural areas that I think really, really appreciate these. But then again, we also are hitting some of our big population centers like Virginia Beach, museums, Henrico County. So the traveling shows, I think, are a really great way for us to really fulfill our statewide mandate. On programming, I want to particularly point out particularly Emma Ito's work on our Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Desi American work. She has been involved in programs, one called The Storytellers, Giving Agency to Your Ancestors. She has done a number of presentations for various bodies of state government related to this. And it's also very much connected to work that we have based on our strategic plan around the New Virginians project and reaching out to many communities that we really have not reached out to very effectively in the past. So there's a lot more detail in the description in your board packet, but it was really a great year in April to really highlight those initiatives. Genealogical programs, of course, is a big core of what we do. Family history is really important to many people in our audiences. We took part virtually in the National Genealogical Society's 2021 meeting, which was going to be held in person in Richmond, but of course, due to COVID, was virtual. We had a virtual booth there, which was staffed, and we did some great one-on-one meetings with staff members and did a number of genealogical videos for people to take a look at. And Ashley Ramey in our education and outreach division did a lot of that work. That's really one of her focuses. So we got a lot of great feedback from that, as well as doing a virtual presentation for the Genealogical Research Institute of Virginia, GREVA. All of these are great partner institutions that we've worked with many times. So and all of that to say too, just in terms of the big picture, one of the things we're thinking about now is how we balance the virtual world, which we've explored both out of necessity, but really has become incredibly effective. And I think some of the programs like the Brown Institute last year were much more effective virtually than we imagined they might be. And so now is that question of how do we balance that with our in-house programmatic efforts and continue that virtual piece that can reach so many more people across the country. One last thing, as we were talking earlier about public service changes, we will be going to a 9 to 5 schedule instead of 10 to 4 on July 6th, so very soon. And starting in October, we were going to have some selected Saturday hours. One of the things that we want to do in the interim is to also do some analysis and reaching out to some of our constituents around, what kinds of hours do people want from us? We haven't done that for a while. This seems like it's a good opportunity for us to reach out through the various, through our catalog system and our card holders, through connections through people who have signed up for our programming, and find out really it is what folks would want us to see us do as we expand our hours. So that is our report.
I'd like to commend Greg and his staff and for really embracing virtual programming during these challenging times. I think this is where innovation really comes forward, when we're meeting unknown territory here. And I really commend you all for your innovation as well as your embracing of this new technology. Thanks so much. That's our report.
Thank you, Marcy. Are there any questions for Marcy or Greg? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Next up is the Legislative and Finance Committee report, and Cham Light.
Am I back on? I'm unmuted, right? Yeah, okay, good.
Sure.
I have trouble toggling back and forth on these things. Half the time I think I'm muted when I'm not, and the other half I think I'm unmuted when I am. So anyway, I'm going to call on Connie Warren to do the financial update reports, which is in your packet. Connie, can you take the lead, please?
Sure. Thank you, Cham. If you all would look at the financial services reports tab, you'll see the usual budget to expenditure comparison with a graph at the top and a table at the bottom. Unfortunately, we had a bit of a technical difficulty. For some reason, some of the descriptions at the top on the graph did not come through when I sent the file to Nancy Orr. And so you're missing the percents and some of the information in the graph, but the percents are at the bottom. So I'm just going to walk you through the table at the bottom, if you'll bear with me here. If you look at the far right column in the table, percent spent, You'll see overall we're at 83% for the year through April 30th. That's pretty normal. It's above what period of the year we're through, which would be about 67%. But if you look at the general fund, it's 90% spent. And of course, that's because we pay the rent payment up front. And that's such a big number that it drives the percent all year. And additionally, at this time of year, we've already paid 100% of our state aid. You'll see that 18,233,584 in the subrecipient column on the general fund top line there. So that's driving that number as well. And at the bottom, CCRP funds under subrecipient, you'll see 843,509. And again, that's grant reimbursements. And we have still have 123,000 outstanding from last year, and 1.2 million outstanding grant reimbursements for grants awarded in the current fiscal year. We expect to move through those prior year grants and the new year grants at a little faster pace now. You know, our numbers were affected last year because of the pandemic with staffing at our vendor and that type of thing. So it's a little lower than it normally is, but no problems there. In terms of available balances, we've got 17, as of April, we had 17% of our money in all funds that was still available to be spent. Today, though, is the last day of the fiscal year in which we can process payments. And we've got about $4,000 left in general fund and about $12,000 in federal payments to process, and we'll be done for the year. So we've spent down as planned. Everything's going really well. No concerns there for the closeout of the fiscal year. Before I leave that, do you have any questions on that particular page? Okay. The next page is the comparison. The top section is April 30th of last year. The middle section is the page section that we just went over at the bottom of the graph. And the bottom table shows the differences between the years. And you'll notice really the big change percent-wise is special funds, which shows a difference of 26% between the prior year and the current year. And we have talked about this before. This is, it's been showing that way all year. This is because of our E-rate program. We were out of sync in our invoicing calendar with the federal calendar. And so last year we agreed to catch up and do a double billing, double payment in that year to get us in sync so that everything would be normal in the future. And that is the main problem for why you're seeing those differences between prior year and current year. Other than that, you'll see the subrecipient column again is showing a difference of $1 million in general fund and a little bit 234,530 in CCRP funds. The $1 million is the permanent restoration of a state aid increase. And the 234 is a combination of, excuse me, a combination of the carry forward into the current year of last year's grant reimbursements to be processed in this year. And the program bought a vehicle, which was budgeted adopted in one year and carried forward into another. Other than that, everything looks pretty normal. I'd be glad to answer any questions if anyone has some.
Connie, this is Robert Canada. Thank you for the report. Just because I'm a newbie, I just need some clarification. What does CCRP stand for?
That is the Circuit Court Records Program.
All right, thank you.
We earn a fee for recordation, and we use that to process and maintain circuit court records here, or we give grants to the courts themselves to do digitization, security things, whatever needs they have. There's a grants program that we do.
Great. Thank
to
you.
fund that.
Appreciate it.
Anybody else?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Connie. That is the financial part of legislature and finance committee report. I don't think we have anything to report on the legislative front unless Preston, you or Sandy have something that you want to contribute to the legislative portion of our report.
Thank you, Cham. I'll just note, or Sandy would, that the legislature is coming back into session on August 2nd. Principally to appropriate American Rescue Plan Act funds. So the Commonwealth of Virginia is getting $4.3 billion in federal relief funds that the legislature will have to formally accept and then stick in the budget and then expend. And separately, localities, counties, cities, and towns are getting right at $3 billion. So a lot of that is for infrastructure, spending to keep government operations going. A lot of it is for broadband. K-12 is getting a separate set of $2.1 billion, and just for our purposes, broadband, because that's so much a part of what we have been dealing with libraries in rural communities and elsewhere. A lot of broadband investments can be made from the state funds, from the local funds that they're getting, as well as from the K-12 pot of money. So a lot of attention there. So Cham, that's the only thing. The other thing I would say is federal relief funds aside, the state is probably going to have north of $1.75 billion surplus, general fund surplus. So, I think about that. We think about Barbara Little and the work that needs to be done on the films. So we may have to spring into action. So that's just quick from the street side as to what's going on here at the Capitol. Sandy, do you have anything to add on that?
Nope, that's it. We'll just see what they do with the special session. The one thing I would add is that the American Rescue Plan funds that you just described are separate from the funds that the library has received through IMLS. So we are working with public libraries to spend that $3.8 million. So I don't know how many other pots there are like that are not part of that whole.
Yeah.
But our money is separate from that.
And your money has a much quicker spend date on it than the other money. It's like September 30th of this year, right?
2022.
2022. Most funds are December 31, 2024. So library funds have to be spent roughly 2 years quicker. Anyway, okay. Thank you very much, Cham, for that. Mr. Miller, Public Library Development Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A notion of that $1.75 billion surplus for the state budget, in addition to the records, sure would be nice to see a little of that come towards state aid, which would alleviate some of the conversations the committee had at its virtual meeting last month, which we're going to get to shortly, as we have several action items to address here. But first, we're going to, I'm going to let Leanne fill you in a little bit about the revisions of the Plan for Library Excellence document, which the committee took a vote on last month. And I'll let her fill you in on the changes the updates were made, and any thoughts the committee may have, and I'll finish up after she's done.
Thank you, Mark. You may recall that we tabled this item in our April meeting, and it was attached to your agenda. The Planning for Library Excellence is a document of standards that was developed by the library community, the library director community, and it has been continually updated. When we did our last major revision in 2019, we missed the opportunity to address historically excluded groups from those standards, and we wanted to change that. So you'll see in the document, it has all the tracked changes. It may look a bit messy and sloppy as a result, but we wanted you to see what was there and what had changed before approving it. The Virginia Public Library Directors Association did endorse this document back in March. And so we're hoping now that you all will do the same. I don't want to belabor the conversation knowing we have much business ahead of us and that you've had the document for a while. So I'll invite you to ask any questions that you might have about that.
So seeing none of the questions, Mr. Chairman, should we go to a vote on each item at a time, or should we finish the report and then just do all three items at the end?
Let me ask a question. Do we have to, on the library, planning for library excellence, that just says adoption. We don't need to vote on that, right? We just need to vote on the other two things.
To my knowledge, that is correct. It's simply affirming the wishes of the directors. It's really a procedural document rather than a action item. I'm good. I'm seeing Audrey nod her head. So, so it's really just a pro forma sort of endorsement that you agree with what actions we're taking.
Okay. So do we do that in a form of a vote, or we just do it in a form of the committee went along with it and that's the recommendation of?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say there's consensus, but let me ask: is there not consensus on the planning document? I think the record will show there's broad consensus unless anyone has any. Audrey, do you have any?
I was just going to say, you're in an open meeting, so you have meeting minutes recording consensus. If it's not a specific action that's required by the board, you don't have to. The clearest way to record consensus is through a vote, but if you don't have something that actually requires action by the board, I think you probably have a memorialization of the board's position sufficient to move forward.
Okay, so I think the record will reflect and the minutes will reflect that there's a consensus on this document.
Okay, thank you. And now we will move on to our annual state aid waiver requests and the state aid allotments. And we'll let Kim, because there's no one better that can handle that and understand that better than Kim to explain to us. So you're on.
Good morning, everyone. We have before us the waivers, which include the non-technical waivers and the technical waivers for the information given to us in 2020. For those of you who are new or have just forgotten, the technical waivers are waivers that occur due to the course of business. For instance, there may be decreases in expenditures if there are staff vacancies for long periods of time, if there is a one-time expenditure in one year and not the other, such as the purchase of an HVAC system, things like that can drive these non-technical waivers, which show just a decrease in expenditures for viable reasons. The non-technical waivers are waivers which occur due to decreases in expenditures, which require a closer look. Today we have 40 technical waivers, and we have 2 non-technical waivers. The technical waivers, we would need a vote as a group. And if you want, I can go through each one, but you should have in front of you the sheet that lays out the technical waivers under categories such as decreases due to COVID closures and spending issues. As you heard, there were a lot of problems with deliveries of goods. Funds couldn't be spent. We did have some one-time expenditure categories. There was a reporting error category, and that is due more because of the locality's error than the library's error in just how they apportion the funds. We did have some position vacancies and lower salary hires. And then a few extraneous, such as with Central Rappahannock Regional Library, many of their localities are already capped in the state aid formula, so there is no point in applying for these common governmental funds as well. The Mecklenburg County Public Library had a reduction in common government costs. They just weren't spending as much, so obviously that went down. The Orange County Public Library had some staff paid with the County Cares Fund, so they just used their other funds in other areas but didn't expend as much. And then Samuel's Public Library actually negotiated a better insurance premium, so that was the reason for the decrease with that. Are there any questions with the technical waivers? Okay, Mark, I don't know if this is the point where they need to vote on the technical waivers.
Yes.
Yeah, we do, because there's two separate items. And since the committee did not vote on this, Mr. Chairman, we'll need to have a full motion at the board level. And
Right.
so if it's appropriate time, I'd happy to make that motion now. So I move to approve the state aid technical waiver request as outlined by Kim in the report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Shelley seconded. So we will have to do a roll call vote on this. So if everyone will unmute, and then we will roll through it pretty quickly. Mr. Gary.
Aye.
Ms. Blevins.
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell.
Aye.
Dr. Canada.
Aye.
Maya Castillo.
Aye.
Mr. Islami.
Aye.
Light.
Aye.
Ms. Little.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Reel.
Aye.
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Ms. Sims.
Aye.
And Mr. Tango.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the state aid allotments. We'll have to do another roll call vote on that. So, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Kim, you would fill us in on the state aid allotments?
Actually, before we get to that, Mark, we do need to address the two non-technical waivers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
And we have Massanutten Regional Library as the first one. They are on a 5-year plan because their failure to meet 50% of the median did not improve significantly enough. And normally after the 5-year point, this would go before the board, which it is now, with the recommendation to not grant state aid going forward. However, we felt that there were many conditions which might cause us to look at this in a different way. They were making progress through their 5-year plan. They did have or are having a director turnover this year. Their longtime director is retiring. They are not having any luck to date hiring a new person to become the director. And because of the transitional nature of the library right now, and because their last quarter of 2020, they were closed due to COVID, there was really no opportunity for them to adequately attain that level of funding. So staff recommends that this letter or this waiver is granted along with an abbreviated plan and letter to be sent to the library, indicating an urgent need for improved local funding. And that plan might cover 2 to 3 years.
Is there a specific number that we'd prefer, 2 or 3, or is it just?
I would say 3, just to give a good enough benchmark to see if there is enough progress being achieved. Right now, they're already moved into the next fiscal year, so that's kind of a wash. So I would say a 3-year plan with the first year already being under the books or in the books.
And I asked a question about Nan on this particular one. Their difficulty in hiring a director. Is it money? Is it location? Do we know what the challenges for this system are in hiring a director?
Yes, and I did want to point out that they're in this transition as well. So until they have a director on board that can really manage this conversation with the localities, it's going to be very difficult for them to move forward. with a plan. So the 3-year plan is certainly appropriate. And Mark, yes, everything you just said. We're experiencing hiring difficulties across the Commonwealth, and anecdotally, I can say across the country. And a lot of it is related to pay. Typically, that Massanutten position is a fairly well-paid directorship. It's kind of right in the middle of where our professional salaries lie. And I was a little surprised because I'm sure Dr. Gary would agree. Harrisonburg's a great place to live, beautiful country, lots to recommend itself with JMU there. So I was a little surprised, but I do think that some of this is pandemic play.
Okay.
And I do think that some of it is pay related. But this does seem to be occurring across the Commonwealth. We've had a lot of director turnover this year through the pandemic. Even we've had 9 new library directors. That's a lot. A lot of them are rising through the ranks. And so this is their first directorship. I know that Massanutten, as a large and regional system, is looking for somebody with more experience than a brand new library director. So I think it's just kind of a combination of all of those things. And I'm hoping that giving them some more time, they're looking at various alternatives between perhaps having an interim director, or perhaps having a directing coalition amongst senior staff. So they are looking at options, but they're planning to re-advertise, et cetera. But yeah, unfortunately, Virginia's not alone in this.
One specific question about them, given the size of the system and the fact that the director pay is relatively in the middle of the range, that would tell me that the MLS requirement is not something that's holding them back. Correct?
No.
And that, since for those that aren't aware, the MLS requirement can theoretically hold some localities back on the very low end of the pay scale, because if you have a master's degree, you're certainly worth what you've put into it. So this is not the case in that the direct requirement is not the case in Massanutten at all.
That is correct.
Okay, just a general hiring challenges that we all face.
I think some of it for Massanutten is that yes, they represent the city of Harrisonburg, but they also, their surrounding counties are large geographically, small in population, and very rural.
Okay.
So I think there's just a challenge in attracting the right candidate.
Okay, thank you.
I see that Mr. Brockwell has his hand raised. I didn't know.
I just had a quick question. Given what you know, I know the leadership at the library is one part of this equation, but I also see the need for more local funding. And given what you know about these localities, what do you think is a long-term prognosis for them owning up to their share of this under the state aid kind of requirements?
Kim could probably speak to this better than I, but anecdotally, I would say that the counties are probably doing the best they can, but that Harrisonburg could maybe do a little better. I'm not intimately familiar with what each locality is currently contributing. Kim would be a better judge of that than
I can't tell you what each county is contributing without going back and looking at the survey. But generally, and through communications with the library director, some of the localities could stand to contribute a little bit more. And it tends to be that when state aid is discussed and the impact their lack of funding has on their potential funding, it tends to get more attention, but it doesn't usually come to that until we are having these waiver discussions and then presenting the plan to them.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I know Kim, there's another non-technical waiver you wanted to mention.
I believe we need to vote individually. So
okay,
take a vote with Massanutten on their waiver.
Okay. Then I will move to approve the Massanutten technical waiver with a 3-year revised plan.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Blevins seconded. So if everyone will unmute, we will roll through this roll call. Mr. Gary.
Aye.
Ms. Blevins.
Aye.
Ms. Brockwell.
Aye.
Ms. Canada.
Aye.
Ms. Castillo,
Aye.
Mr. Islami,
Aye.
Light,
Aye.
Little,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Murphy,
Aye.
Ms. Reel,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Ms. Sims,
Aye.
Mr. Tango.
Aye.
Thank you. So proceed to the next technical waiver.
All right, thank you. The J. Robert Jamerson Memorial Library in Appomattox County, mainly due to the same reasons. They do have a new director in place, but not long. And she is working very closely with the county to inform them of their status with state aid waivers. Also, the county administration, I understand, has been under turnover, so that is another factor. Again, staff proposes a new abbreviated plan of 3 years and a letter to the library indicating the urgent need for improved local funding.
Do you have any questions on this one for Kim? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the non-technical waiver for the J. Robert Jamerson Memorial Library with a 3-year abbreviated plan.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I second.
So Ms. Murphy, Dr. Canada seconds. So everyone will unmute. We will take this vote for the Jamerson Library in Appomattox. Mr. Gary.
Aye.
Ms. Blevins.
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell.
Aye.
Mr. Canada.
Aye.
Ms. Castillo.
Aye.
Mr. Islami.
Aye.
Mr. Light.
Aye.
Ms. Little.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Reed,
Aye.
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Sims.
Aye.
Mr. Tango.
Aye.
Thank you. Chair votes aye.
Okay, now we'll move on to the full state aid request. Full state aid request. And Kim, do you have any information for us on that one?
Yes, this is the draft state aid allocation for 2022. And so look it over, and then if you agree with those allocations, that will need an approval as a whole. And just as a background, state aid did receive an extra $1 million with the last General Assembly session. So that is the 18.5 million.
Does anyone have any questions or need a little bit of extra time to look over the full state aid requests? Seeing none, I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the state aid request for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you. Is there a second? Ms. Sims seconds. So we will roll through this roll call as well. So everyone will unmute. Mr. Gary.
Aye.
Ms. Blevins.
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell.
Aye.
Dr. Canada.
Aye.
Ms. Castillo.
Aye.
Mr. Islami.
Aye.
Mr. Light.
Aye.
Ms. Little.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Reel.
Aye.
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Ms. Sims.
Aye.
Mr. Tango.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Okay, so one final item is more of a discussion point that the committee had regarding state aid and the state aid formula. Those that have been around for a while know that fully funding state aid is a big deal for me. I can see how this can certainly help libraries throughout the state, and having $1 million from the General Assembly this time around is a great benefit. We are somewhere in the neighborhood now of we've got 63% of fully funded state aid, whatever fully funded actually means. It just right now it's the upper limit that the state has set in the code. I've often wondered how we can encourage the state to continuously fund at the full funding rates. I've also suggested perhaps we could look at a way to modify the state aid formula that would allow for those that are sometimes in more of a need to see a larger share. So we had this discussion at the committee level. The core of the discussion was, in order to do any of this, you need to have the state do a joint legislative audit and review committee report, JLARC for short. And that is a formal request that would come from the board. And our discussions at the committee level were to not pursue that at this time. Several members of the committee felt that the equitable distribution of state aid is where it needs to be, given regardless of size of a library system. We just need to get more of the money. So I think the overall consensus was the way to get to fully funding, the way to get to smaller libraries, to get the I don't want to say smaller, I want to say the less financially robust library systems, closer to 100% of the state aid versus some of the more well-funded systems. The best way to go about doing that is to continue to reach out to our legislators and encourage them to get the remaining, I believe it's 9 million more, 10 million more allocated towards state aid, which is great. So that budget surplus could certainly go a long way towards solving that problem. And so the committee ultimately decided not to take a vote on that and have further discussions in the fall. So that's why I want to just kind of update everybody on that to know what the discussions were all about.
I would just add to that, Mark, that unfortunately with the surplus, that would just be one-time monies. And
yeah.
the state aid is, every year. I was, as you were speaking, though, thinking, that surplus money, the previous JLARC study, as well as the Himmel and Wilson report that followed that, recommended a second funding stream for those underfunded libraries or challenged libraries. And, maybe that
could be.
Maybe that surplus, we could start a subgrant program for those that fall in the bottom 20% of funding. So let's talk.
Absolutely. That is all, Mr. Chairman.
You're on mute, press.
Sorry, I've never made that mistake before. I was thanking you, Mark, for that excellent report. That's a lot of work. And mentioned that we have Pia Trigiani here from the Virginia Foundation, from the Board Foundation, as well as Scott Dodson. So Library of Virginia Foundation report is up, and Pia and Scott,
thank you.
Yours.
Thank you. And thank you for the warm welcome. Good to see everyone. And for those of you who may not be as familiar with the work of the foundation, we are a nonprofit tied to the library in support of the library mission. We provide funding for programming and other requests from the staff. We manage a small but vibrant and hopefully growing endowment, and have a board of and growing board of very devoted library folks, including 2 representatives from this board, Paul Brockwell and Blythe Scott. So we are tied to you and tethered in a good way to the library and support the work of the library. We said goodbye at our last meeting. We've concluded our business for the year. And Steve Rogers, who has been our loyal president for some time, retired from the board entirely, but he's on to newer, bigger things. And I encourage you to read his book. It's called Into the Room. He's just published. It's available on Amazon. And Steve, who a longtime corporate executive at Dominion Virginia Power and has been a faithful supporter, became an author in his retirement from Dominion, and has done great things, and we're very excited for him. Of course, Dominion being one of our long-term supporters. By the way, Mr. Chairman, one other big business at the legislative session for the lawyers in this crowd is the selection of judges for the Court of Appeals, which the jurisdiction was expanded so circuit court records are going to get even more important. So we need to make sure that those are properly funded and in a safe place at the library. Just a couple of points, our new board members. We're welcoming 4 new members. BK Fulton from Richmond, who's the chair of Solidify. He's got several business, retired executive from Verizon. Lou Marmo, the chief operating officer at Temper Pack. Brad Parks of Williamsburg and Middlesex County, who is an author. We like to have an author on our board. And Dr. Lynn Rainville of Lexington, who's the Director of Institutional History at Washington and Lee. And I think she helped with some of the research recently in support of that board's decision about the name of the university. Very interesting and eclectic group that we believe will add a lot to our board and to the perspective of the board. At our May meeting, we adopted our budget and the strategic plan that, as we said, will complement the library staff efforts and planning. We're particularly grateful, and if you haven't used, and if you're in the search for good strategic planning support, Spark Mill in Richmond, Chris Bennett led our really cool, very effective virtual strategic planning. It was really great, and thought he did a great job. Scott, we would be glad to make available to you a copy of our strategic plan, which is very succinct, direct, and reflects a real interest in working more and more with the library staff on planning and forward thinking and trying to get in front of programming so that we can get out there and not only raise funds for it from donations, but also seek some grants. We've brought a grant writer on a part-time basis onto our staff, and that's working very well. And we'd like to target and ramp up our grant writing because we think that's a great way to fund some of these really great projects that the staff develops. And in closing, I'd like to just thank you all for your contribution. One of our to the foundation. One of our goals is to have 100% participation on this board and 100% participation on our own foundation board and gifts to the library. There are lots of different ways to give. Of course, we like checks, cash, credit card. We'll take your books. We recently, my family recently closed our home in Big Stone Gap, and we had some great books that Scott just sent me a note that were in. This house was full of books. I think they were the VMI and a couple of yearbooks, which were kind of fun from different places. So your gifts to the library, obviously the gift of time that you're giving, serving on this public board is tremendous and should not be overlooked. But we appreciate anything you can do to support the efforts of the library and the foundation. I'll turn it over to Scott. One programming note, I know Sandy may be speaking to it. We've got a big program this week in celebration of the Virginia Constitution, but just a reminder, because that is a collaboration between the library, the foundation, and a bunch of lawyers. So it's really, and Preston Bryant's crowd over there at McGuire Woods. I'll turn it over to Scott for a report, and glad to entertain any questions, which I will promptly refer to Scott. So, Scott.
Well, thank you, Pia. I'll be brief. First off, I would also like to welcome Lana and Robert to the library's board. We look forward to working with you. It's really great to see new faces. So that's exciting. I'll just kind of give you a little bit of an update of where we are at the year end. So right now we're actually having a pretty good year, pandemic aside. We're about 17% ahead in unrestricted giving and about 190% ahead in restricted giving for the year, partially because there's just been some really great projects, one-time projects to work on with the library team. So that puts us currently, although I'm holding out hope over the next 48 hours for a few more letters to come through. We're currently at about 180,000 ahead of where we stood at this point last year. And when you think about kind of the way that fundraising has been, just with the pandemic and other issues, I think that we feel like we've made some progress and we're ending the year in a really good place. Our investment account, which is mostly endowment, is sitting right now at about $4.5 million compared to $3.6 million at the end of the last fiscal year. So we have seen we have benefited from the uptick in the market. And just a huge thank you to Blue Edge Capital, who manages our investments, for really keeping the ship afloat in the last year, making sure that we were making really good decisions. I talked about some of the restricted projects that we've been working on over the past year. In total, we were able to spin off about $140,000 for various library programming, in addition to projects such as raising $50,000 with a huge effort from both boards to the building of a digital studio, which I know the library team is currently working on, so that we can be more effective in how we do our virtual programming with the proper equipment and environment. Raised over $50,000 specifically for conservation projects, including a collection of George Mason's private papers and some digital newspaper initiatives. We funded the very beginning of a diversity internship and fellowship initiative, and those two interns just started last week. I did send their information in my update from a couple weeks ago, or Sandy in my update from a couple weeks ago. So I hope that all of you got to read that, and we anticipate that program growing over the next year. To Pia's point about kind of ramping up our foundation efforts, where the staff has been really great that we've been able to work with is really getting ahead of projects so that we have time to put out foundation requests. So in the last 6 to 8 months alone, we've sent out about $320,000 worth of foundation requests for specific library projects. We've been successful with about 72,000 of them, and there's 220,000 of them that are still remaining, which I said I would love to hear in the next 48 hours as we close out the fiscal year, but I'll be happy to hear whenever they arrive. I'm hoping that they're successful. And also, one thing I want everybody to just keep an eye out for, as we start opening up as the library again and are looking more towards public events, we'll start sending out more invitations to private events at the library. We think it's important to connect to patrons, connect to donors, connect to community leaders. And we're really going to start ramping up those efforts in the coming year. One thing to add on that is that as we continue to develop our staff, we've had one foundation staff person retire, our finance and HR manager, which we're currently in search for. And my assistant director of development, Lane McFadden, is expecting and could leave us anytime in the next, say, 3 to 4 weeks. So if you don't hear from me for a little while, it could be because I'm doing 3 to 4 jobs. So I appreciate your patience in advance. But that should all hopefully be resolved in the next couple weeks or months. Everybody, I'd like to remind you to save the date for October 16th for the 24th Annual Literary Awards. While much of it is going to be virtual again this year, we are planning on doing some hybrid in person, and we're just still looking at the viability of that, just given where everybody's heads are. As everybody knows, with the pandemic restrictions continuing to lessen, I think we're just trying to make sure that we're doing the most effective thing for the literary awards themselves and for the library, but also to make sure that at its core, it's also a fundraising event and are able to be successful in both sides of the equation. The Virginia shop continues to operate. I will always encourage everyone to go to the shop to look for some really great items that Courtney's been putting in there lately, focused on Virginia artists and artisans. It's still operating a little behind this year, as most retail should be, or as most retail is. And it sounds like the Capitol itself will not open again until after Labor Day for shop operations. So we're looking to the end of the summer to kind of be at full capacity again. And we'll start ramping up our retail team as we get closer to those dates. A couple more things. We've had some really great Weinstein Author Series events. Since our last meeting, one with Kim Roberts, her book of poetry and compilation from DC, which is really fascinating. And another with Dr. Vanessa Holden and her book, Surviving Southampton, which is about the women that were involved in Nat Turner's rebellion. Both really enjoyable, very different programs. And we look forward on continuing relationships with those authors in the future. And then we will be having our next 2 Weinstein Author Series in person, all things moving as they are right now. The first with Dr. Karen Cox and her book, No Common Ground, Confederate Monuments, An Ongoing Fight for Racial Justice. That's in September 14th. That'll be the first presentation of that book in Richmond, which we're very excited about. So we're looking forward to her coming in September. And then as a reminder, in November, on November 17th, we'll be bringing in New York Times bestselling author Alexis Coe to talk about her book, You'll Never Forget Your First, a biography of George Washington. So lots of really exciting things happening. Look, as we approach the fall, to more literary programming with the shop and bringing in some more authors for talks and some artisans for presentations and workshops that we'll have around the shop operations during the day. We're all kind of doing our best to kind of work within this new virtual environment. And you'll see with the literary awards, especially, we're moving to a partially in-person, but we're not going to get rid of the virtual elements that we were able to add last year because they were so successful. That being said, I don't think there's any substitute for an in-person program. As Pia mentioned, we have our first one on July 1st. So we'll let everybody know how it goes with the 50th anniversary of the commemoration of the 1971 Constitution. But we're really hoping to do more of this as we move forward into the fall. That's all I have. If you have any questions for Pia or I, we're here right now and happy to answer anything you have. Or if you ever want to reach out to us offline, and we're happy to answer those as well. Thank you.
Hey, Scott.
Thank you, Pia. Any questions for the foundation?
I have one question, Mr. Chair. Scott, is it true that on July 1, our opportunity to achieve a participation goal renews for the next fiscal year? Oh, you're on mute.
The answer is yes.
I hit mute right as I started talking. I obviously made that problem for the first time as well. Yes, our fiscal year ends on June 30 and we'll start again on July 1st.
And just to add, I just got confirmation, Paul, that we are at 100% participation from our board. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. That's really fantastic.
Thank you.
Doesn't mean you can't still give again, though.
Another opportunity around the corner.
Thanks to everyone. Thank you very much. Any other questions to the foundation? I don't think so. Excellent. Thank you very much for excellent report. Report of the Librarian of Virginia, Ms. Treadway, you're on.
Well, it's wonderful to see everybody, though I have to tell you, I am thrilled that this may be the last time I'm seeing you all in this format. The technology has allowed us to keep moving forward, but as those of you who've been on the board for more years know, there's so much that's lost when board members don't gather and talk with each other face to face and meet each other. And I especially want to thank board members who were appointed close to a year ago now, but who have never been to the library and into the building, as well as our two new board members joining us today. So I do want to let you know we will be scheduling and we'll poll you for an available date to do an orientation. Because I recognize, you're hearing things for the first time, like the whole state aid formula. You're hearing about the CCRP program and wondering what in the world is this. And we just weren't able to do it last year due to the pandemic. But we hope this summer to find a date that you can all come in, you can meet the management team and learn about the multitude of things that the library does, because we are an agency that in some other states are often 2 or 3 separate agencies. So we have a very broad mission, but one that's important for you to understand all the pieces, parts of. So thank you to new members who've been with us a while without that. And thank you especially to Lana and Robert for joining today, a little bit in a fog, but we'll hope to get you fully oriented by September. As you've heard from several of my colleagues who presented, we are excited to see the pulse quickening a little bit in downtown Richmond and to see more people coming into the building. We are especially looking forward to the end of the summer. I think Greg mentioned we had recently closed our woman suffrage exhibit, but at the end of August, we'll be opening a new exhibit, which will be a photography exhibit focusing on a road many of you from Northern Virginia I know well, called Columbia Pike, and the history of that road and the people who live along it, the people who've used it for the last 150 years, because it's got a rich and colorful history that captures really the transformation of Virginia itself in so many ways. So be looking for that exhibit coming up, and we're hoping that will will be an added draw for people to come into the building. As Pia and Scott alluded to, we're really excited about our first in-person event, which takes place on Thursday. And I want to thank Preston and Scott especially, and Pia as well, for working with a small working group that we were invited to participate in through the governor's office to make Virginians aware, fully aware of what the Constitution that we currently live under in this state is all about, why it's so important to understand the Constitution that it replaced, which was one of the most discriminatory and regressive ones ever in our history, and as well to understand how important one state Constitution is to your daily life. It actually has a greater impact than the federal Constitution does on the way Virginians conduct their daily affairs. So we are excited to have an outstanding panel making a presentation that afternoon, which includes the gentleman, Professor A.E. Dick Howard from UVA, who was he was a very young man at the time, but he was the executive director of the commission that rewrote that Constitution. So he's got stories that none of us know and we're privy to, and I think it'll be a powerful program. And just outside our lecture hall, we will have on display for 3 days only, mainly because these are important documents we need to protect from light and exposure, but we'll have 4 of Virginia's constitutions on display, as well as some material from that commission that rewrote the current one there. So if you can join us, we hope to see you, but we're excited. We weren't sure how many people might sign up, and we're going to have a very, very good crowd here on July 1st, which is exciting. I did want to let you know that you've heard me mention it before, but it finally got off the ground a few weeks ago, and that is the commission. I'll read the title because I always get it wrong, but it's Commission to Study Slavery and Subsequent de jure and de facto Racial and Economic Discrimination Against African Americans. That's a state commission that the library was designated as the staff support for. And we are partnering with the Division of Legislative Services, which actually has the money to support the commission, and we have the staff that will be doing it. It's a great partnership. But they had the first meeting recently, an organizational meeting, and the upshot is that the commission has, I think, agreed to our proposal to hire a project manager who would work for the commission but be based here at the library, so that we make sure that the work of this important commission moves forward and fulfills the broad scope of the commission and actually makes recommendations, not just studies this subject, but makes recommendations that will hopefully transform people's lives. So I wanted to assure you that was off and running. We're very excited about it, and you will hear more probably in the fall, I would imagine. Also in the fall, we hope to be making a presentation to this board and also to the foundation board about the planning we've been doing for our 200th anniversary, which comes up in 2023, and get you excited, I hope, about some of the things, and also helping us to flesh them out, to flesh some of the ideas out, and make that year a very successful one in terms particularly of raising the visibility of the library across the Commonwealth, not just here in Central Virginia, but all over the Commonwealth, and having people really understand what we do and how it matters to them. So we're excited about that event, and look forward to sharing more with you in the fall. Also in the fall, I hope that many of you can plan to stay around a little bit longer, maybe after lunch. We would like to get all of you out to the State Record Center, and we'll rent a van or something to transport everyone out there. As you know, the the longtime desire to expand the State Record Center finally came to fruition, and that work is beginning now. The Department of General Services is buying land next to the current State Record Center. They are finalizing the design element for that building, and hopefully by the fall, we'll be able to start working with architects to do all the details, design all the details of what that expansion would be like. So since you'll be hearing a lot about it, we thought it was important for those of you, especially who have not been to the State Record Center, to be out there so that we can walk you around so you can see what it is now and understand better the planning that we're doing for the future. So again, that will be an in-person meeting. The governor's executive order under which we are meeting virtually expires on July 1st. So all of our meetings, that would include our orientation and future board meetings, will need to be in person. I think that's all I had. Since this is our annual meeting and where we transition to the new fiscal year, and normally it's followed by a nice celebratory lunch. So I'm sorry I can't treat you all to that this year. But I do want to thank, especially Preston Bryant, our library board chair, for 2 years. I'm grateful to him for saying yes to that second year to give us the continuity through our pandemic. And I'm especially grateful to him for some, for the constant support and advice, but especially for some heavy lifts that he did on our behalf this year. And I do mean that the extra funding we were able to get to support the gubernatorial records project, I know he was absolutely instrumental in pushing that over the finish line. So very, very grateful to that. I'm grateful to all of you for sticking this out with us in this virtual world because it is not the same. And I thank especially our new members for being as engaged as you have been. And hopefully once you meet your colleagues in person this fall, you'll realize what a special board we have. Do want to thank Audrey Burgess, the library's legal counsel in the Attorney General's office. We sometimes present Audrey with some situations and some puzzlements and some issues I'm sure she's never encountered before, but she's been nothing but gracious, responsive, and helpful. And we and this board could not do what we do and have the confidence we're doing it appropriately without Audrey. So thank you, Audrey. And finally, want to thank the executive management team, many of whom are participating in this Zoom today, and the staff behind them. This has been a rough year and a half for everyone, and especially hard to keep the ties and the communication and the momentum going when you have so much happening through teleworking and in the virtual realm. So I'm proud of them for getting us where we've gotten, and I think we're positioned to really spring back strong as more and more people are coming back to the library. And so just want to thank you all. It's been a challenging time, but I think the next year certainly looks a heck of a lot better. So thank you for all of your support to get us here. And Preston, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for that report. It has been an extraordinary year, and you and your senior leadership team and the entire staff have done extraordinary work. Are there any questions for Sandy Treadway on her report? Hearing none. Thank you, Sandy. So a natural extension of that is report of the executive committee, and the executive committee is by bylaws. It's the board chair, the vice chair, the immediate past chair, and then 2 additional board members. So it's Bryant, Scott, Blythe Scott, Cham Light, Shelley Murphy, Johnson Bowles was on it, and she rotated off. One of our tasks is to renew the librarian's contract. And it's the consensus of the executive committee to extend Sandy's contract for an additional 1-year extension. You may recall that her 2017 contract allowed for a few successive or two successive 1-year extensions. This is the second such extension. We, as you just got from Sandy's report, it's been an extraordinary year. She has continued to work with the governor's office quite effectively, the General Assembly session, and getting another $800,000 over 2 years for the gubernatorial records processing, the very efficient and effective and heavy lift on finalizing the curation of the Wilder papers. There was millions more in Federal Relief Act funds that had to be, various funds that had to be handled. We've got the very important Virginia Constitution project underway, and there's been enhanced coordination with the foundation, among other things. So it's the consensus of the executive committee that we execute a new 1-year contract for the librarian. That would be July 1, 2021. So it would start in just a few days and go to June 30th, 2022. And I have a resolution before we put it up for discussion. Let me just go ahead and get the resolution out on the table. The resolution says, it's titled Extension of Librarian of Virginia's Executive Employment Agreement, June 28, 2021. And it's just one sentence. Resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Library of Virginia that the Executive Employment Agreement of the Librarian of Virginia shall be extended for a 1-year period commencing July 1, 2021 and terminating June 30, 2022. And it's the unanimous recommendation of the Executive Committee that we execute this. Are there any questions or discussion? So I move, for we as a committee move this. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Robert Aguirre. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's do a roll call. So if everyone will unmute your microphone. Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell?
Aye.
Dr. Canada?
Aye.
Maya Castillo? I think Ms. Castillo had to leave, if I remember correctly. Cham Light?
Aye.
Barbara Little?
Aye.
Mark Miller?
Aye.
Shelley Murphy?
Aye.
Lana Reel?
Aye.
Blythe Scott?
Aye.
Marcy
Yes,
Sims?
you're back.
Aye.
Leonard Tango?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So thank you for that. And I'll say to Sandy and Audrey, we'll process the paperwork today or tomorrow and finalize that.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question about, I wanted to wait till after the motion. Is it the library's bylaws, or is it state requirement that we have to do this essentially 4 days before the next year starts? Is there I mean, look, Sandy can stay as long as she wants to stay, but is there a way that this can be done either earlier in the current fiscal year, or is there a way for the contracts to be for the following fiscal? In other words, is there a better process than relying on the board to do something 4 days before the fiscal year starts?
Well, I don't know the answer to your question. I would defer to Audrey if she has any comment, or to Sandy, who's been around and knows how this has been done historically.
Historically, that's how the board has always done it. If they just always voted on it at the June meeting, but there's no reason why that couldn't change and be moved up. Yeah,
it's usually, I think it is one of those things that it's just your historical practice. And actually, this isn't unique to the library. Most agencies handle the renewal of any contract term for their chief executive at their annual meeting, usually because that corresponds with the fiscal year calendar.
Right.
I think that if you have a situation, for example, this is Preston already referenced, this is the last extension that's available under, and so I think you generally see things happen a little earlier when you have a new negotiation or a renegotiation of terms that's going to require a new contract. But when it's just a renewal under existing terms, it's not infrequent to have it fall. I think part of the issue is your annual meeting just fell really close to your usual cycle. But there's certainly no requirement that it be put off.
So it's the discretion of the library board as to the timing of it.
Yes, and usually that's the initial discussions and that sort of thing are the chair is usually the go-between for things, but it's also something that, again, it's when it is a just a renewal under the previous terms, the structure you're seeing here where your executive committee is making a recommendation to the full board and it's a pro forma renewal under existing terms. It's not unusual to see it in this context, but it can certainly be addressed earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
And what I didn't say but should have is there were no term changes to the contract. We changed the dates of it, for, reflecting the new 1-year term, but those dates were the only things that changed.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question. Next is report of the nominating committee, and let me call on Marcy Sims.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The nominating committee has reached consensus on the nominations for first the slate of officers for 21-22 and also for the 2 positions on the executive committee as called for in the bylaws. Our proposed slate of officers for 2021 are Blythe Scott as chair, Paul Brockwell as vice chair, and Preston Bryant as immediate past chair. And in addition, we propose 2 other board members to serve on the executive committee, and those we propose are Cham Light and Shelley Murphy. Would like to, on behalf of the committee, I would like to make a motion that we accept this slate of officers for the slate of officers and the nominations for the executive committee.
So moved.
The Marcy Sims moved and Mr. Aslami seconded. Before we go to a vote, the floor is open for any additional or other nominations. Are there any? Hearing none, the nominations are closed, so we can proceed to the vote to the nominations of the slate as proposed by the nominating committee and Ms. Sims and seconded by Mr. Aslami. Please unmute your microphones and away we go. Mr. Aguirre.
Aye.
Ms. Blevins.
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell.
Aye.
Mr. Canada.
Aye.
Ms. Castillo. Mr. Aslami.
Aye.
Mr. Light.
Aye.
Ms. Little.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Reel.
Aye.
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Marcy Sims.
Aye.
Mr. Tango.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Excellent. We're getting all of this administrative work done efficiently. Thank you very much. The report of the chair, moving on, you will see in your packet there are revised electronic meeting policy. This is in response to recent changes in the law that agencies have to respond. And so we have really just amended to correspond with statutory changes. We need to take a roll call vote on that with apologies. So if everyone will unmute. First of all, are there any discussion, any questions about that?
And I think you need a motion and a second.
Yeah, is there, right?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Brockwell.
Is it possible that we could combine our approval of the electronic meeting policies and the meeting dates into one motion?
Audrey, can we do that?
Unfortunately for this, you can't, because this is a separate statutory approval to allow you all to participate. The board is required to have a standalone policy that allows electronic participation by board members. And that would need to be a separate approval so that you've got a record that your board has approved that, so that it's basically reverting to what it was before the pandemic. And I'm happy to answer any questions about it. I know it's a little bit cumbersome.
Good try, Paul.
Can't blame me for trying.
So is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Islami moves and
Second.
Marcy Sims seconds. So here we go. Mr. Gary,
Aye.
Ms. Blevins,
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell,
Aye.
Mr. Canada.
Aye.
Maya Castillo is not here. Mr. Islami,
Aye.
Light,
Aye.
Little,
Aye.
Mark Miller,
Aye.
Kelly Murphy,
Aye.
Ms. Reel,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Marcy Sims,
Aye.
Leonard Tango.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And so additionally, keep yourselves unmuted. Additionally, you'll see the revised meeting schedule. So for 2021, 2022. So please go ahead and put those on your calendars. And is there a motion to adopt the proposed meeting dates?
Also
moved.
move.
Brockwell moves, Mr. Light seconds. Roll call is now. Mr. Gary,
Aye.
Ms. Blevins,
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell,
Aye.
Mr. Canada.
Aye.
Mr. Castillo is absent. Mr. Islami,
Aye.
Mr. Light,
Aye.
Little,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Murphy,
Aye.
Ms. Reel,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Ms. Sims,
Aye.
Mr. Tango.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And sadly, we are saying goodbye to two members, and we have resolutions. Let me find them. So Mr. Islami is departing. Mr. Islami, you want to tell us how much you're going to miss us? We've enjoyed having you.
Absolutely. This is a sad time, but unfortunately, it's time to move on to other things. But I want to just thank you all and for the opportunity to serve on the board and to meet you and get to know some of you at least. And I wish you all the best. And I have no doubt the new chair and vice chairs will do great work, and wish them luck.
Thank you very much, Mr. Islami. You'll see the resolution that's in your packet that notes that Mr. Islami was appointed in December of 2015 by Governor McAuliffe and then reappointed. He has served extraordinarily well. He has been an active member of the Education Outreach and Research Services Committee, as well as the Public Library Development Committee, and on the Nominating Committee. And he's been a strong advocate for public libraries, and we appreciate his service to the Library of Virginia and to the Commonwealth. We also are sad to see go, excuse me, Kathy Johnson Bowles, whose term ended recently, and there's also a resolution in your packet for for her. She also was appointed in October of 2015 by Governor McAuliffe and served for her 5-year term. She worked well. She comes from higher education community and cultural nonprofits, and so she brought that to the board. She was an active member on the Education Outreach and Research Services Committee, the Archival Collections and Records Management Committee, and the Legislative and Finance Committee. And she served as chair of the Education Outreach and Research Services Committee until recently. So we thank her as well for her service to the board and to the Commonwealth of Virginia. May I have a motion to adopt these two resolutions? I think we can do these two together.
So
Moves and Mr. Miller seconds. And so,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I want to offer a brief amendment to Johnson Bowles' resolution to note her service as vice chair for 2 years.
Okay.
And other than that, it looks great, but I've realized that got left out of the preparatory text for today.
Thank you very much. And so we will adopt that, and we will rely on Sandy in her office to make the official correction.
Yeah, we can add that easily.
So so that comes as a friendly amendment, but is there a motion on that amendment? Mr. Brockwell moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Miller seconded that. So we'll take that as a friendly amendment. So we will have the two motions of the two resolutions before us. They have been properly moved and seconded and amended for one. And so we will move through this roll call. Mr. Gary?
Aye.
Blevins?
Aye.
Brockwell?
Aye.
Canada?
Aye.
Ms. Castillo's not here. Mr. Islami?
Aye.
Mr. Light?
Aye.
Little?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Real?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Ms. Sims?
Aye.
Mr. Tango?
Aye.
Thank you. And chair votes aye. For those of you who are new to the board, not everything requires a by name roll call unless we are meeting virtually. So we apologize for these many separate roll call votes. But once we're back in person, things will go much more efficiently, and we look forward to seeing you. Is there any old or new business to come before us? Your chair has none. Ms. Treadway, do you have anything?
No, just important to see the ceremonial passage of the gavel from you to Blythe.
Blythe, would you like to say a word or two, and then Paul?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I am humbled and honored to have been put into this role, and I have some very large shoes to fill following our leader, Preston Bryant, who I hope he knows he's not off the hook in providing me good counsel. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody. And Paul and I are going to do our very, very best to lead the library board. And I hope you all know that now that he and I are in these roles, we are doing our best in representing the board and the library in this new realm of diversity and new Virginians. I believe I'm the first African-American female leading the board, and Paul is our first openly gay male in the vice chair role. So this is an amazing day for all of us, and I'm honored, and you can always call me, and I'm looking forward to meeting our newest board member. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with Sandy and everybody. And Paul now.
Thank you, Mr. Brockwell.
I couldn't have said that any better. I'm grateful for the opportunity to help serve in this role and support Blythe in her role as chair, and to continue partnering with the great work going on at the Library of Virginia. And again, thank you, Preston, for all of your wonderful leadership the past 2 years. Looking forward to the year ahead and all the many things that we can celebrate as we gather again in person.
Indeed. Thank you very much. And let me just ask Audrey Burgess, do you have anything we need to do? I'll follow up with Audrey and Sandy on paperwork, but Audrey, anything else?
I do not have anything else, but thank you for asking. And of course, I remain available at your leisure for any consultation you might need.
Excellent. So I think we just need a motion to adjourn, or I think we can just call for adjournment. Thank you, everyone, for a very quick and efficient meeting today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting, truly seeing you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Happy summer.
Aye.
Happy
Great
summer.
seeing everybody.
Aye.